Hi folks, and welcome to the latest in my Would I Recommend series of game reviews, where I give you my honest, no-nonsense opinion on games after I've finished with them. And today I ask myself, would I recommend Subnautica? And the answer, oh hell yes! It's probably the best survival game I have ever played, and I don't like survival games very much. I loved this, would highly recommend it, and loved every minute of playing. Just click on the link down below if you'd like to watch my entire Subnautica adventure. Meanwhile, I'll tell you what the game's all about. Subnautica casts you into the role of a crew member on a spaceship that has, for some reason unknown, crash-landed on an ocean planet. You manage to survive the crash, but you've no idea if any of the rest of the crew managed to make it out alive. From your meagre life pod, you're going to have to A, find a means of survival, and B, find a way to either get help or get home. It's a game of discovery, exploration, building, scavenging, and, if you decide to turn it on, in the options, eating and drinking. Although for those of you who don't like that sort of hardcore survival level, that is optional. And almost all of this takes place underwater. The immediate need to find food and drink is later replaced with the need to build, well, quite exotic vehicles in order to go deeper and deeper, to find the answers you need to get home. You'll find yourself exploring a wide variety of beautiful looking and sometimes incredibly terrifying ocean biomes, and there's a really cool story running throughout the entire thing, which I won't spoil here. Now let me tell you about all the things I really liked about Subnautica, and it's quite a long list. First up, the thing that really struck me was the absolutely gorgeous graphics and incredible sound. I absolutely loved this. I could spend hours, in fact I did spend hours, just swimming around in the shallows, watching shoals of fish, watching plants waving in the tide, looking at bubbles, listening to the rebreather going. I just thought it was all absolutely amazing, beautiful and relaxing. Well, mostly. The sound effects also add to the fear factor. There were some truly terrifying moments, which I'll come on to a little bit later on. But the visuals and the audio, they really add to the atmosphere in this game. They really help make it. Everything from your rebreather bubbling away to when you hear that clank of the hatch shutting behind you as you enter the base and you know you're dry and safe and can breathe again. It's all just absolutely magical. Now, a few people have reported optimization issues with the game, and in fact there was quite a large patch I think recently to work on and improve this. I played the entire game through before this patch and I didn't have any problems, so I just loved the whole experience and I thought it looked amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit there, because one of the other things I really liked about the game was there's several play modes that you can choose before you even start. If you just want to go in and build a base, you can just go and build a base. If you want to be able to explore without worrying about running out of food and water, you can do that. I played it on the survival mode, which does require you to eat and drink at regular intervals. Well, more on that later as well. And there's also a hardcore mode where you have one life. If you are dead, that's it, game over if you get killed. Which can be a little bit unforgiving, as you might expect, if the game does something weird or there's a mistake or there's something that is out of your control and it leads to your death. I can imagine that's quite a painful experience. But I enjoyed it on survival mode, enjoyed it a lot. But there's a nice variety of choices for any level of player, for any level of commitment that you wish to make. This has got you covered. The story also kept me thoroughly entertained. Unlike some other survival games, this isn't the sort of game that goes on forever and ever, although there's no reason that you need to. There's no time limit. You can just play and build and play and build and explore and scavenge and try and survive for as long as you want. There's no real pressure to get the game finished, but the story does draw you in, and it has lots of twists and turns that I really didn't expect. Even though this game has been out for years now, and it all came as a nice surprise to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and the ending in particular had me in stitches and was really cool. So there's lots there to find out and discover and really enjoy. And yes, I did say the ending had me in stitches, because whilst this isn't a pure comedy game by any stretch of the imagination, there are some really nice humorous bits just to add a bit of levity into the game. There's a few messages you'll pick up from your crewmates over the radio. There's a few little Easter eggs put in the game that you'll find. There's a few lines. There's a coffee machine that you can make if you get the blueprints for it, and it talks to you, asking you if you want a coffee when you load into the game. And also there's a really cool line right at the end of the game that you have to listen out for. I think it's at the end of the credits, so don't skip it. because it's funny, it's cool, and I like that. It doesn't have to be a comedy game, but I do find that all games benefit from an odd bit of lightening up here and there. Remember when I reviewed Greedfall? That didn't have anything in whatsoever. That was a very deadpan game. Well, this has a few bits that will make you smile and laugh, and that's always appreciated. Now, at the other end of the spectrum from the sense of humour, there's the sense of dread and terror, and this game instilled that in me on many, many occasions, and I don't just mean with jump scares. Whoa, Jesus Christ! Although, yes, that was terrifying. No, I mean just with like the psychological impact of some of the actions you're going to take. And one thing that got me a lot was I'd be exploring down near the ocean bed, fairly deep down, and suddenly I'd come across a cliff edge, and all you could see, or a ravine edge, or whatever you want to call it, all I could see down there was just the deep, empty black. And I'd think, I really don't feel comfortable plunging off the edge of this and seeing how deep this goes, because there was the unknown, the darkness, the blackness, the sense that there could be something horrible waiting for me down there, and often there would be, and it really made me reluctant to go into such places, and it made me careful. And you know what, that was actually a good thing, because caution is not a bad idea in a game like this, but the fact that it really makes you think like that without having to throw jump scares and horrible monsters on you all the time, that's part of the magic of the game. It really is well done and well put together. And also, some of the noises you would hear, you'd be just in your sea moth, pootling around down in the sea kelp somewhere, and suddenly you'd hear some strange wailing or a roar, and you think, oh my god, have I been attacked? And it might be nothing, or you can't see anything, but it starts playing with your mind, and you start to panic and worry, and it all adds into the tension. Something else that was really well done and implemented, I think anyway, was the base building. Now, I have dabbled with survival games before, and I've never been a big fan of the base building because a lot of it just feels like it's unnecessary. You end up building things just because you can rather than because you want to, or there's things put in there which are purely cosmetic, and you think, well, why should I grind all the materials to build whatever this statue is, because it's going to have no tangible benefit to me whatsoever? Well, that's not the case in Subnautica. All the different elements to the base that you can build, different rooms, different stations, different energy outlets and all sorts of things, they all have some benefit, they all have some use. You don't have to build them all, but you will find a use for most of them and will want to build most of them as well. And not only that, I think it looks amazing. I love the modular idea of the underwater bases that they've got. And you'll want to build more than one base as well. You can have little stations like refueling stations for both you and your vehicles. You can have food and drink and fuel stations, energy stations for recharging vehicle batteries dotted around the map to help you with exploring. And you know what? It just works really well. You will probably have to build more than one base to be able to finish the game, although you can build a giant submarine and use that as a mobile base. Risky strategy if you lose it, but it's an option. And I love options in games. Now, I mentioned about the exploration. Subnautica does exploration pretty well. It's a big... Well, it seems like a very big world to explore anyway, when you're trying to find your way around it. And it gives you lots of incentive to explore, mainly going and finding parts, blueprints, new materials to build better things, to help you improve your base so you can go deeper and deeper, so you can discover and build new vehicles to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and find new things and maybe find a way off this planet. So the incentive to explore is really there. And there's quite a nice feeling when you actually decide, right, I'm going to go off on a big expedition, but I'm going to prepare myself with rations and water. I'm going to take, well, maybe a few materials to build a small emergency base somewhere if I need to recharge things. And it makes you plan and think like that. And do you know what? Part of the preparation for some of the expeditions was one of my favourite parts of the game, especially when I went really deep down and had to build a new base. I tried to make sure I took everything I thought I would need, just the right amount of materials to build exactly a very specific base that I had in mind. And I really enjoyed the planning element of that. It was like setting off in a colony ship for a new land. Well, it kind of was. It just wasn't a land. It was underwater. And the final thing that actually struck me as being a major improving factor in the game is the fact that it's not combat based. It's not about killing monsters, punching things and harvesting things. Well, it's a lot about harvesting materials, but it's not about fighting and combat. There are some big sea monsters in here, some terrifying things, and technically there are ways to kill them, but you don't have to. You don't have to try and fight them. In fact, usually it's better just to try and run away as much as you can. There are industrial tools you can use to try and kill things, but there's no benefit to it other than being able to say, hey, look what I did. So I quite like that, because rather than thinking of being combat orientated all the time where you're trying to kill stuff, trying to get better weapons, this is about running away, hiding, stealthing, surviving, just existing in this ocean world. And I think the game's a lot better for it. And yet, in the interest of balance, I have to try and find a few things that I didn't really like about the game or didn't enjoy. And I've come up with 3, but I think 2 of them aren't even valid complaints. For starters, there's no map in the game. Now, yes, it's supposed to be a game of exploration and discovery, but you can't create any sort of map to record where you've been. For all, your character has access to data pads and wonderful electrical and mechanical devices and can craft incredible and advanced vehicles. He seems incapable of crafting a map. Now, this is of course intentional. It's so that you use the beacon system in the game. You can craft beacons and you can deploy, I think, as many of these as you want at whatever locations around the world, underwater or on one of the islands in the game, and you can rename it and use it as a waypoint to travel back to. It's a bit of a carry-on, and I found myself having to turn some of these on and off all the time, otherwise they were always on the screen distracting. It's not a bad system by any means, it just would have been really nice to have been able to create a map. And I guess there's nothing stopping the player doing the good old-fashioned method of having a piece of scrap paper and mapping something down with that. You do have to even create a compass in the game to be able to know which direction you're going in. That's good, that's absolutely fine. I would have liked some sort of craftable, creatable map. It's not really a valid complaint, it's just something I would have preferred done a little bit differently. Now, secondly, again, this isn't really a valid complaint, but I played in survival mode and there's the need to eat and drink and find food and water, which gives you a sense of urgency. However, I found that your food and water meters reduced at one hell of an accelerated rate. Like, for example, I'd stuffed myself with melons, which I found growing on one of the islands, which was wonderful, and I learned to cultivate these things. And I would fill myself up completely on them, and I would spend about 20 minutes in real time doing a few jobs around the base, gathering some materials ready for the next expedition off where I was going to go. And just in that 20 minutes of game time, I would find that my food and water levels had reduced so much I would have to stuff myself again. And it's a constant battle, especially early on when you don't have access to really good foods, to, well, just to get some playing done without having to constantly eat and drink. But it is a survival game, it is in there. And if you don't like that, well, you can just start the game in the exploration mode, where it's exactly the same, you just don't have to worry about eating and drinking. So if you really didn't enjoy that aspect of it, well, you don't need to play with it. Which is one of my favourite points of the game, is that there's lots of good modes to choose from when you start it up. But if I could have changed that, I would have just had your food and drink meters decay just a little bit slower, I think. And finally, the only real issue that I have with the game, and this is for all it's been out for, I think, 5 years now, there are still some glitches in it, and some of them are pretty serious. In fact, one of the ones I ran into could have been game ending, and it was very close to the end. You only get one save slot, and something went really weird where I just got catapulted through the walls of the game world and was plummeted towards the core of the planet in blackness, and then reappeared back at the top again and went on a never-ending loop. And for all I'd saved the game just before this happened, this went every time I loaded back in, and it would twang and fling me through this wall, and I thought, this is it, it's game over. I've got nearly to the end of the game. I've put hours and hours and loved it in, and it's going to break right here. And luckily, I was in a prawn suit with a grappling hook, and I think on the 4th or 5th attempt at loading in, I managed to fire the grappling hook off and grab something, and that pulled me back into the world, or at least partly in, and I managed to salvage the game from that point. But I it was the most bizarre bug. That was a almost game-breaking one. There's some smaller ones which aren't game-breaking at all, and I don't mind, like seeing fish floating in the air or in the middle of your base in no water. Stuff that's quite funny like that. But I gather it was a smaller development team that created Subnautica, and resources are always limited, and the worker hours are always limited. I'm surprised there was huge glitches like this still in after all the time it's been out. But that's really the only negative thing I can find about the game. Overall, I absolutely love Subnautica and I would highly recommend it, and I would love to play through it all over again, even though I know what the story is now. It was just so nice, just swimming about underwater, sailing about, if that's the right word for going underwater in subs and submersibles. I really loved it, and I would give it a solid 9 out of 10. I don't normally like survival games, and I loved Subnautica. That tells you how much I enjoyed it and how good the game is. Do go and try Subnautica if you get the opportunity to. It's often on sale now, and it's a really good buy. Also, check out the links down below. You can come and watch my Let's Play or watch me play games like this live on Twitch. Hopefully, I'll see you there.